Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so much better than I was last week.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad. It was kind of dark for you last week. You were in the dark PowerPoint black hole of energy.
Yes, and just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But we did the webinar on Wednesday, and it went so well. And I have to say thank you to many of our listeners were there.
Oh,
and that is so awesome for me to see, because I hope you get a lot out of these webinars, but I really appreciate the support myself, because to me that feels like you're supporting me as well. And it was really cool to hear people say, "Oh, I love your podcast, and I'm a longtime listener." And
that's fantastic.
I made a couple mistakes.
You did?
Yes.
Like what? What kind of mistakes?
There was one part of the webinar where I completely lost place because I had the slides were a little wonky because they didn't fit exactly the way they were
never fixed it?
Well, they tried, and so most of them were okay, but there were a couple that were weird, and so that threw me off.
No.
And so there was one part where I just completely lost track of what I was saying, and I'm looking at the slide and it doesn't look right. So that's throwing me off. And then usually when I do my own webinars, I use the space bar to click to the next slide.
You do. Yeah.
Yeah. But this way, the system that they use, I had to actually click with my mouse, and I had to click this little arrow. And so there were many times where I couldn't get the arrow to click. I'm just really what is going on? So, I hope people appreciate the, kind of humor that I tried to make fun of myself with. But, and then there was another big boo-boo that I did is I had an exercise for them to do, and I forgot to put the exercise in the actual handout.
Oh, no.
So this is what I've learned. Can I tell you what I've learned?
You're doing it wrong. Do it better.
Yeah. It was this thing though that I felt like, okay, the material is so good. I'm going to offer this webinar to my audience next year, because I really do think it's a great material, lots of great content. One of the nicest compliments I had was somebody said, I thought that I would come into this knowing already what you were going to say. And it was a surprise.
That's awesome.
So to me, that was like the highest compliment ever. And I'm definitely going to do this again, because I think that's important. So be on the lookout for that. And what I'm learning is that the next time I present this, it is going to be better, because I've worked out the kinks on Ada's audience, unfortunately. But hey, you live and learn. And
thanks, Ada.
Yeah, thanks, Ada, for being, my
guinea pigs.
Although I have a real guinea pig, and he's really cute. His name is Oliver.
Actual guinea pig.
Is a real guinea pig. I'll have to put a picture of him, because I got to tell you, he's one of the cutest little guinea pigs ever. We
have just a little bit of follow-up. Before we dig into the follow-up, though, you know the drill. Head over to TakeControlADHD.com to get to know us a little bit better. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at TakeControlADHD, and call us 503-664-4ADD. And thank you, everybody who has signed up already to support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/the ADHD podcast.
Thank you.
This is, as we say, it's listener-supported podcasting.
And we're getting a Facebook page up, right? Soon?
Yeah. I wrote the copy.
Awesome.
Did you like it? Was it good?
It was great. We're changing the photo, because we really didn't dig the photo.
No, that was not good.
Yeah.
That was one of those things. You do a thing, and then you go to sleep, and then you wake up and it's terrible. The thing you did before the sleeping, it was terrible. And so that has to change. Has to change, and it will. And then we will have the group launched for Patreon supporters, and you'll get an email from yours truly, and it will point you to the right place to go get logged in. So there you go.
Yes,
Thank
and
you,
I
everybody.
really want people to join. So really do please consider that $5 a month so that you can be part of this community, because I'm really looking forward to like having a little bit more contact with people that listen to us, because the emails are great. Please keep sending the emails and letting us know what you think and how you feel about what we're doing. But I also just want to have it go a little step further, and I see us doing that with this Facebook group. So
I really hope so. And you know, we're really trying to do some new things and change the way we do this and attend more events and and grow and be a bigger part of the community, and your direct support helps us to do that. So, you know, if you have faith in us and trust us to do good things for the ADHD community, then we hope you will trust us enough to throw us a few bucks through patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. Thank you for your support. Okay, we have some feedback, and this before we start talking about email. Oh, yes. Email. I know you're excited about this.
No, I am actually. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. I seriously, because
really, I cannot tell if you are being truthful with me right now.
No, I know this is going to, well, I know it is going to definitely help a lot of listeners, but it's going to help me. And I can't.
Are you having email problems? Is that what you're?
It's not so much that I have an email. Like, I feel like I have a pretty good control of my inbox, but I have this little side file, right, where I put emails that I don't want in my inbox, but I think I need to keep them. And that's definitely gotten out of control. And so I need to figure out why I'm keeping them, Pete. Like, really, why? I never go back to them. And so
this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
This really is therapy. I love it.
Yeah. So no, I really, truly am very excited to hear this. And we haven't talked about email, I mean, for years, literally. Yes. So this is great. But yes, I did have some feedback. I suppose since it was written to me, I'll go ahead and share it.
Okay.
All right. So this gentleman emailed me and said I had some podcast feedback. Nikki mentioned going to a general practitioner to get a diagnosis rolling. In my experience, it actually started with my therapist. Sometimes GPs are less sensitive to this stuff, and so I thought that tip might help listeners. Well, I emailed him back and I said, absolutely, you're right. Like, I don't even know why I didn't even think about that. So I'm so glad that he brought it to our attention. So then,
and my hunch is that it's because it's generally going to, if you go to a psychologist, it's generally the GPs that are going to write the prescriptions. And so, like, if you're going to need medication, right? I mean, the therapist isn't going to write a prescription for you.
Yeah.
And so I can totally see how, you know, it's a chicken or the egg thing, right? Yeah. But I think most of the diagnoses come from generally the therapist. The assessments come from the therapist.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, there was more.
Well, yes, there was more. So I thanked him for his suggestion, said I was going to put it on the show. Here I am talking about it. And he replied back with a little bit more information. And I asked if I could share this because I thought that this was a really, great journey and successful one. So this is his story. He got a therapist and he talked to her about focus and some different things and how for years he thought he had ADHD. She did some prelim tests and said, yeah, you know, there's probably something there. So she sent him to the Northwest ADHD Center, and actually, in parentheses, he says such a good Portland resource. So he is here with us in Oregon.
Outstanding.
And went to the Northwest ADHD Center, and I'm in a year in for treatment. Yay! And it says here this is after at least one time 3 years prior where I got a screening run at a university, and they actually said no, he didn't have it. They noped it, is what he says. So he was really glad that he got a second opinion and graciously then says, thank you for all you do. So I just thought this was really good that, you know, he had gotten tested 3 years ago and they said no, but he didn't necessarily believe that because he was still, you know, having these issues and his therapist, which is obviously a good one because she listened, sent him in the right direction. So I wanted to put that out there and let people know that, even if somebody has said no, go get a second opinion if you're still feeling challenged.
Thank you so much for writing in and sharing that story. That's wonderful. And we should call over to the Northwest ADHD Center. Why have we not connected with them?
I don't know.
That would be super fun.
But we really need to do that.
Somebody on from there. So there you go.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And then I have another little story I just want to share, and I haven't really thought it through. So you're going to hear me verbal processing as I'm talking about it. I have a client who I've been working with for the last several weeks. And there was some incredible shifts that I saw happen recently. And I just really wanted to talk about it for a minute, just to kind of give people hope when they feel a little bit maybe that there isn't any. This gal came to me pretty frazzled. She was definitely overwhelmed. She was working part-time and had a family to raise and really didn't feel like much was going right. And in the conversations that we had at the beginning, there was a lot of taking care of other people, but there was very little about taking care of herself or really valuing who she was. And I asked her a question, and it hit her pretty hard. And that question was, well, do you love yourself? And she hasn't been able to break free from this question. And so it got her to think about a lot of things. And this is weeks in coaching sessions. And yesterday we were talking and she was talking about how much of an impact that had on her, and that she thought going into coaching was going to be just kind of fixing these things, fixing her meal plan and fixing how she was going to do chores and get things done. And she's like, I'm realizing that it's much more than that it's more about my brain and how I'm thinking about things and what my perspective is. And the next question I asked her when we were talking about some other things, I said, well, do you trust yourself? And, of course, that's another big question that has a huge impact when we ask ourselves that. And so, again, going kind of through the conversation, a couple of things that kind of came clear because we're kind of coming to the end of our time together. She said, you made me realize it's okay for me to ask for support. It's okay for me not to have to do this alone. I'm accepting my ADHD for the first time. And she's making those accommodations to navigate it. And, when I reflected this back to her, she said to me, she's like, well, congratulations on saying navigation. Because she's a very faithful listener of our podcast. And, she said, I know that, with the conversations with James Ochoa, that you were really trying to change that wording. And so she gave me a kudos, yeah. So this means a lot to me. This client is very, very special. It was very exciting to me as a coach to see these kinds of shifts and breakthroughs. And I just, I hope it gives some inspiration to some people out there that, it isn't just about the systems. It's not just about the strategies, but it is so much of what's in your head and working through that. So that was a beautiful moment in my career, and I just wanted to share it with people.
I'm so glad you did. That is a beautiful story. Thank you.
Now let's talk about email.
Nikki, when I started thinking about these, putting together notes for this conversation, I realized the last time we talked about email, I think I was pretty bearish on email. I'm all up in Slack and these alternative ways to communicate. Text, email was totally overwhelming. And so, I was looking for every way that I possibly could find to jump out of email because I was hating email. I was hating it. And so I started looking up stats to see if I was right.
You love stats.
If my prognostications were correct, that people were more like me, and that they were jumping off the email ship. And it turns out I was totally wrong. Email is the unkillable, I think. 3.7 billion users send 269 billion emails every day. according to the Radicati group recent email report on global email usage. It is bigger than Facebook. It's bigger than Twitter. It's bigger than all of the alternative, chat and text solutions. I've said email should die. It won't die. So I feel like we need
it's gonna keep living.
We need to learn to live with it and change the way we think about it. And I think mobile has made it worse. 79% of people use their smartphones for reading emails. 79%, right? That is higher than the percentage of people who use their phones for making phone calls. According to a report from Email Monday. Email rates, open rates are up 180% over the same time last year on mobile. 50% of respondents say they wake up and the very first thing they do in the morning is look at their email on their phones.
Oh my gosh, I'm so guilty.
Yeah. In bed. Like that's what you do, right?
Yes, yeah. I do. I do that.
So that... I don't know. I struggle with that. Because I know that I fall in and out of the pattern of doing that too. And when I do, when it becomes that invasive sort of thought, like, oh, I got to catch up on email. Oh, I better be in on email. Oh my gosh, what have I done? It's usually because I have changed one of three things, right? I've changed my lifestyle around email. I changed, that is to say, how I relate to email personally, right? How I let it define my behavior. I've changed my organization somehow, where I change how I actually implement email in whatever email app or tool I'm using, or I've changed the technology, right? I've changed actually what apps I'm using to look at and use email. And I'm one of those people, I'm an app flibbertigibbet, right? I jump from app to app because I like to try different apps. And so I approach this by looking at, what apps are there available? And I typically would have started with desktop, because that's where I personally spend most of my time, just in terms of the work context. But I realized that's not where I check my email the most, right? Because I'm like you, I'm on mobile more often than not. And I'll, even while I'm working on something else on my computer, I'll look at my phone if an email comes in. Right? Do you find yourself doing that? It's sitting right next to you. You're working on something, a presentation maybe.
No, I actually don't do that because I put the notifications off of my phone so I don't see my phone. Or
well, it's like you've already read ahead then.
Oh, sorry.
That's really good behavior. Keep going.
Well, because that's like, I know better in the sense that when I have to do the presentation or I have to work on something that really has even when I work with clients, I shut everything off because I know myself. I know that if I see it come through, I will be curious to see what it is. And I don't want to do that. So, that part I've definitely have, changed. Well, I've never done it. I mean, that just hasn't been an issue for me, but.
Well, it's really good. And I think there are many of us who are stuck in that little bit of a loop, right? Where it's just always available. So it's always in your pocket. It's always buzzing. It's on your watch, wherever it is. And changing lifestyle, organization, or technology can help you get to the other side of it, like you have done, right? Is you make sure that you are addressing when and where those notifications come in. And so I think the first step really is that lifestyle behavior issue, right? Which is, and we've said this before, so it kind of buzzed through it. Stop checking your email all day long, right? Just stop thinking about your email. I like to think about email like I think about regular mail, right? When do you get your mail? I go out and I walk out to the street once a day and I get my mail. Well,
oh, Pete,
what?
That is not a good example for me.
Why? Because you don't get your mail at all.
Like ever.
Well, let's just leave the metaphor there, because I know you're actually debilitated with postal mail.
Yeah. I gave it to my husband, but he's not doing any better than I am.
No, he's not better. Well, let's think back to a time when getting mail was still exciting and it wasn't mostly junk mail, right? You'd go out, you get it once a day, or it would come in once a day. Well, what if you were to approach email that way? What if you were to approach email where it only came to you?
Wow, that's a different thought, isn't it?
A couple of times a day, yeah. Like maybe it just comes in at 9 in the morning and at noon and at 4 in the afternoon. What if it did that? Just ask yourself, what would change in my life if that happened? What would the intervening time look like? between email sessions? What would change in the way you do business and the way you communicate with people?
Wow. That's a great question.
I think it's a good and important question. I really do. I think your strategy to, when moving into organization, your strategy to turn off notifications is critical, right? I mean, it's just critical because otherwise the notification is owning you, right? Your mail is owning you. Look at me, look at me, look at me. This is not a new thing, obviously, to be talking about. But I feel like it's important to keep reinforcing this. Don't let email reinforce your behavior. Don't let notifications reinforce your behavior. It's not good. Now, you mentioned you have a standalone folder where you drop all your email that you need to think about later. How does that work?
Yeah. So this is what I've done. I use a Mac, obviously, right? So we all know that. And my email has all of these little folders, on the side. And I have these categories. And so if there's an email that I feel like I need to save for whatever reason, then I stick it into these categories. So just to give you an example, I have a category for group coaching. So anything that comes in from my groups, I put in there if I feel like I need to save. I have podcast emails. So when people email and they have a question or something that a suggestion, I put all of those in there. Just different. And then like to read. Oh my gosh, the to read one is ridiculous. Because there's all these things that I see that come in like through newsletters and stuff. And I think, I want to read that sometime. So I stick it into the to read. And so the email is not in my inbox, but I've got I just have all of this stuff here. And I very rarely ever go back to it. The only time I probably would is for bills because of taxes.
Okay.
But even that is ridiculous. Like I've got stuff from 2014. Like I'm not, it's, and that's just if I get audited. It's like I have to have proof that,
yeah, right.
Do I even need to have that? Do I need to have that there?
Well, and I don't know. I don't know if you need to have that. My hunch is you don't. And here's why. You are using that filing system as an intermediary that exists between the email and the activity that goes along with what needs to happen as a result of the email. And let's use your reading, the to read list as an example. So the email goes into that box, but when it comes time to actually sit down and catch up on reading, what is the context? Like how do you do that? Right? Like when you want to sit down on the couch, what does it look like for you to read articles?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. So that's an interesting thing to notice about your behavior, right? You don't do that. You're not a person who sits down and reads stuff that you've filed away to read for later. That's not what you do. So maybe you are adding a context that is aspirational. That's something like I sort of in the back of my mind wish I was a person that did that. And so I'm going to go ahead and create this little folder because it will satisfy that sort of, hunch in the back of my mind that I could be a person that does that. But there's no value to you, no intrinsic value to you in doing that. So why are you doing that?
It's a good question.
For those kinds of emails, for me, I'll tell you, I generally will, if there's an article that I want to read, or that I think I want to read, or that I think might be a resource for me someday, I don't file it in email. I send the article over to Evernote. And because, we've talked about Evernote, it's my filing cabinet. And what's great about Evernote is search. So when it comes time for me to need a resource on whatever topic it might be, I start with Evernote and I search for that topic. And if it comes up, that's where the article is going to be, right? That's the thing. I may not have ever sat down to actually intentionally read it.
That makes a lot more sense because and that's exactly what I'm doing is I'm using this as a filing system. So I really should do the same thing with bills, is that put it by the year and just stick it over to Evernote and file it there.
Because then because that's where your system lives, right? That's your trusted system for bills and for reading in this case. That's where your system is. Now, maybe you don't use Evernote for reading. Maybe you use Instapaper. Maybe you use Pocket. Whatever it is, there are a lot of services, if you are a reader, that actually let you save articles for later. If you are not a reader, if you're an aspirational article reader, then maybe you don't need the filing system to support that. Maybe you just archive it in your Gmail all mail folder and let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, I know, right? Let it go. Yeah. We're going to pretend like we're frozen.
Right.
I do have a very simple, probably silly question. But how do I get the email to go into Evernote?
Let's hold on to that.
Okay,
thank you. Now,
yes.
I started this in my notes. I actually, the headline is "Stop filing, just stop it, please stop it." That's
Nikki, stop filing.
But it's not just
articles.
Nikki. The number of people I run into who still meticulously create folders by sender and by project and by whatever date, and drag emails once they're done out of their inbox into this meticulous folder system. It used to have value, and I have a hard time hearing anybody make a case for why that works anymore. And I hear this, well, it works for me. I hear that all the time, but I would question whether it really works for you. Right? It's especially if you're living with ADHD. It is a time and attention black hole. It likely doesn't work for you. You think it works for you because you've always done it that way, and you don't know what it will be like to let go of that system, to change the way you behave with regard to email. But I'm telling you, email isn't worth it. Email isn't precious. Email is on a time decay, right? Every single minute that passes from the moment the sender pressed send, that email becomes less and less valuable, forever approaching zero value altogether. That's the way email works. But we assign this sort of artificial value to this email message that it allows it to take over our life, to give it greater gravity, right? To make it just heavier on our shoulders. And I think that is ultimately destructive to time and attention. The alternative is to leverage some of the new technologies, not even new technologies, but some of the innovation that's going on in email coming from companies like Google and Apple and Microsoft around search. And search has gotten so good that you really can let go of your meticulous filing system and trust that when you hit search, it will take you just a few seconds to find what you are looking for when you need it, and not have the overhead of creating this giant process. I have exactly one folder, and that is my all mail folder. I have inbox and then all mail, and that's it. And my all mail has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of messages. And I know that thanks to Google's investment in search, I'll be able to find what I need when I need it.
So when you have an email that you do want to save, you're just sticking it into all mail?
Yes, but let's talk about the next thing, which is, do you remember my handy dandy concept of the workbox?
Yes, and I think this is really important to highlight that your inbox, I'm looking at your notes, your inbox is not your workbox.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we need to scream that, because I know there's so many people that do that.
Yeah. And there are a number of different companies that are trying to fix that problem, right? The problem is this, that we have a number of signals that come into our lives, right? We work and we have all of these different inboxes. The inbox could be, our inbox on our computer. It could be our voicemail inbox. It could be our actual physical inbox, our mailbox. It could be the sticky notes that people pass you in the hallway. It could be a business card that you get at a conference. Whatever it is, this inbox could be your pocket. It could be whatever, but all the incoming signals need to end up in one place. Maybe you live on your calendar where all of these things that come into your life are actually scheduled and put on a calendar, and that is You know exactly where you're going to be at any given time because that's when you're doing the work. For me, it is a to-do app called Things 3 on the Mac. That's my work box, right? That's my task list. That's where I have all of the information about all the work that I'm going to need to do at any given time. And when appropriate, it is scheduled so that tasks show up on a given day, et cetera, et cetera. But that is where all of my work is integrated. All the tasks are integrated, whether it came from that business card at a conference or that sticky note that was handed to me. I go in and I dump it all into Things, which defines the work that I need to do. The email inbox is just another incoming signal. And the challenge that I see is when people have both an inbox, that is their email inbox, and a work box, like for me, Things 3, which has a different set of work. Right? And so now you have two different places where you're living. You have your email that you always feel like you need to stay on top of, that the weight of the world is on you to respond quickly because, what'll happen if people don't get a response from you right away. But you also have this work that's now decaying on your calendar and in your workbox because you haven't gone through the process of actually integrating the two. And I think that is, a best practice that pays such high dividends with just a little bit of effort. And it will change your life, right? So I look at it, I look at my email inbox as something that needs to be turned into actions in Things. I send every email that I need to do something with into Things. If it is something that I need to respond to, I have a shortcut key in my email application and I hit that key and it sends it right over to Things where I type in a little action that says, respond to Nikki about that nice review that we just got. I put a date and time on it and I save it there. Right? Does that make sense?
Do you actually, this is the part that I'm not getting, and it does make sense. And I completely understand the inbox and the workbox, but I guess I go back to like my original question about how do you get it to Evernote? How do you get that? Are you saving the email and putting it into Things 3 so you can actually see the email? Or are you just like taking some notes from the email and putting it into Things 3 that you need to respond to me?
Well, here's what I like, and this gets to this, that we're going to skip around a little bit around the technology. The email apps that I've centered on, the email app that I'm using right now, and the task application I'm using. What I love so much about it is that they use these URL schemes, and a URL scheme is just a fancy way of saying that, one application can in secret, or not secret, but invisibly open another application. So when I'm working in my email app and I hit the shortcut key that I've configured here, and on mobile, it's a swipe action. So you just swipe, from the left to the right. And that action on that email means send to Things. It includes both the body of the message and a link back to the message in my email. So when it comes time for me to act on that email, I'm in Things. That email is no longer in my inbox. It's archived. But that URL is in Things. So when I tap on it, it opens the URL, it triggers the URL, so it opens it in my email application and allows me to respond to it right there very quickly when it comes time for me to need to do it.
Okay, so my question then is, when you say it's archived, does that mean that you've deleted it?
No, I don't generally delete email. I archive email, and that is definitely a Gmail convention that is being adopted by other providers, where you're just saying, okay, I'm finished with this email, but it might serve as a reference for me later. And space is largely unlimited. And there are a lot of concerns around servers that are, running and energy and all of these things. There is a cost to saving data. But generally, for at least a couple of years, I leave that email in my all mail or my archive, email box.
So there's probably still some email you delete,
I do.
Right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I definitely do as I'm going through it. And I have a little shortcut for me. If I hit if I'm selected on an email and I hit delete, that's actually archive, right? It just means delete it from the inbox, but it stays in my all mail, my all mail folder.
And that's where your all mail is your all mail is your archive, is the stuff that you think that you might need at some point, or that you just want to have, and then eventually clear it out.
And then my command delete on my keyboard, or I think control delete on Windows, command delete is configured to delete. That actually moves it not just out of my inbox, but saving it in my archive. That actually moves it out of the archive, out of the inbox, and puts it in trash. And trash empties itself on a 30-day rolling schedule. So on any given day, if it's within the month that I deleted a message, I still can go back in and search that trash and find it. So that's the workflow that I've sort of landed on, which is search for stuff that I need that I haven't scheduled as a task. Anything that's actionable, I put it in my workbox because I want to be able to see the actions that are associated with it and schedule the time into my day. And I don't manage my day in my inbox, right? I don't live in my email and let that define my day. Email related tasks are actionable. Respond to, research XYZ. This is the kind of language that you want to put around your email so you don't fall into the trap of hyper-focus on email clarity. And that's a real problem for me. That's when my ADHD really triggers. When this system isn't working, I know it's generally because I've let the email, I've let the activity of addressing email become the thing of the day, become the little reward that's giving me that dopamine push, right? I'll hyper focus on cleaning out my email and responding to every single thing that's in there, and it takes over, and that's when I lose focus on the actual work that needs to be done, which is all sitting over in my to-do app, my task app.
Wow. Yeah. I love this.
The challenge I think that people run into is around switching costs. You know what I mean? Like at some point you have to face the costs of changing your behavior. And that may look like email bankruptcy. We've talked about that before, where you say, look, I have an inbox that is full of, tens of thousands of messages I'm never going to get to. At some point I have to put the time in to move all those into the archive and to clean out my inbox and make sure that email that I need to act on is in my workbox and that email that I don't is archived or deleted. You have to schedule the time to do that. And that's a switching cost, right? That's hard.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to say. So if you're really backed up, like I've got a lot of files that I have to do something with, right? I either need to delete or archive. Yeah. Or put into action, or
for example, you have one that's right on the top of my head. You said, when you get a podcast follow-up, something about podcasts, and that's one of those interesting things. Like you've got it stuck in kind of an intermediary space, but you seem to have a process. Like when we record a podcast, I imagine you go to that file and look at it. But I wonder if there isn't a behavior around, taking an email from that podcast and putting it directly into the show notes for the episode where you want to talk about it, right? Doing that rather than leaving it in an intermediary space, actually put it where it's going to be, where you're going to need it.
You hit the nail on the head.
I did.
Because just before we got onto this recording, you asked, do you have any follow-up? Do we have any follow-up? And I wanted to follow up on that story, right? I wanted to tell about that story about the therapist. And I had to go into my email. I had to go into my inbox because that's where it was sitting. And search for it and look for it. And I couldn't, it took me maybe a couple minutes. I mean, not a lot, but it took me a couple minutes to find it. So what you're saying is when I get that email and I know that I want to share that story, I should just be putting that into our show notes and then deleting or archiving the email. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So
now, but I got to go back to, there's people that are listening that have 1,000, 10,000 emails in their inbox, and they've got all of these file folders. And so what do you tell them? Like how you're just saying, you got to take the time to get rid of that stuff.
Well, at some point, you're going to have to face the fact that you're never going to get through 10,000 emails that are sitting in your inbox. And this goes back to the time decay of email. Right. As you scroll down, you just scroll down your list of emails, you will find that the further you get from the top or the bottom, depending on how you're sorted, the closer the value comes to zero.
That's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
At some point, you will face that switching cost and you will realize that the email that you're holding on to has no value, and you'll have to face the time of just getting it out of your inbox, cleaning the slate, and moving it over. Now, we've talked about this concept of inbox zero, and it was coined by a fellow named Merlin Mann, who is a funny and smart internet personality and a smart speaker, and I like Merlin a lot. But what's funny, I mean, he coined this years ago, and I think he's all but abandoned it because of his own feeling about email. The whole concept of inbox zero was, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you clear out your inbox, that it is empty, because and all that means that all your email is filed, you've taken action, and that you're on top of your activity. And I think there are some problems with thinking about it that way. Right. And I don't think inbox zero is a thing you need to worry about it for all people. I mean, you may be the person who has 10,000 messages in your inbox and you don't care, right? It doesn't have any emotional weight on you at all. That that email is one giant list of messages that have come to you, and you kind of read them when you get them. And God, more power to you if you're that person. I love you. You are fantastic to be able to do that. From the ADHD perspective, I would submit that adopting something like inbox zero, being able to look at your inbox and see that it is empty, that emptiness is a visual indicator, right? That your systems are working. It is a signal, right? It's that visual reminder that you're not falling behind, that you're not lost in the weeds, and that you can trust your system. And when your inbox is full, if you have adopted some of these other systems, like the workbox, for example, then you know that maybe something else is not working. Again, it's a visual indicator that you're behind somewhere, and that maybe you should take a bit to get back on top of it again. I don't think, I'm certainly not suggesting you have to be, hard on yourself and super vigilant about hitting inbox zero, twice a day, every day. But I do think it's an important thing from the ADHD perspective to consider that it could be a good signal for you, a good indicator that you're on top of the work where it needs to be, when it needs to be scheduled, et cetera. Does that make sense?
It does, because when you first said that, it was interesting because I kind of chuckled a little bit because I thought, gosh, the ADHD perspective, what is he going to say? Because my first instinct was, I wonder if somebody wouldn't feel a little bit of panic.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, there's nothing there. What am I forgetting? But what I love is what you said is that no. I mean, you kind of like answered my question, because it's not about forgetting. What you've done is you have touched everything.
Yeah.
You have put it in a place that you trust, whether it's things 3 or for me, it's Todoist. It's like I love how you expanded that, because it's like, no, you actually have done the work here.
Right.
So there isn't anything to forget.
Right.
There isn't anything to panic about. And like you said, it's a really good signal that things are working.
It's just like the key bowl, right? On your entry hall table. If you're somebody who has adopted the key bowl, you walk in the house and your keys go in the bowl. And if they're not in the bowl, then what's wrong with your system? If they're not in the bowl, then one, you better not be in your house, right? The keys better be with you, and you're not. But if you're in your house and you're looking at an empty key bowl, check your purse, check your pockets, check the front door, because your system is failing. If you're in the house and the bowl is empty, then your system is failing, and you need to evaluate that system and find your keys. First find your keys, then evaluate the system. How about that? So I look at it the same way. These visual indicators are really important. They're an important reminder about your system. And in this case, you'll want the empty inbox, because that's a reminder that you have a system and that you can trust it today. So
I love that. Pete, I am so grateful for you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Seriously. It's so wonderful that you can see these things and like work through them, because I know there are so many people that I work with that struggle with this. And then with my own struggles, you've just given me such inspiration to like figure this out. Like make it more streamlined and trust it and get rid of the long line of emails trying to search for something.
Well,
it's just awesome.
I think that's really important. If you can ask yourself that question, like your question about the reading list, am I a person who sits down and catches up on these articles? If not, why am I saving them? Right? Just ask yourself that question. I want to wrap up with just a couple of more thoughts on the actual technology, right? This is a digital episode and we haven't talked about any apps. So I feel like I need to talk about that. Yeah. When you are looking for, if you are on the market, if you think you might be on the market for a new email app, if you are just using the default email app on your mobile device, then, here are some things to think about. These are just some words that you might want to look for when you are on the market. And I already mentioned I use Airmail for Mac and iOS, and I love it because of integrations, right? It integrates with my workbox, in this case, Things 3. It also integrates with Fantastical, my calendar, and Evernote, my filing system, and Trello, and CardHop, and OneDrive, and Dropbox, and Todoist, and it integrates with all of these services. So what does that mean? It means you can tie your email client, in this case Airmail, with those services and allow them to talk to one another.
Okay, how do I do that? Because I want Airmail to go to Todoist. How do I do that?
Okay. Well, first,
come on.
Go buy Airmail at airmailapp.com or in the Mac App Store, and you got to pick it up for iOS and for Airmail, and for the Mac. And then when you go into the services menu in preferences, you'll have an option, and I can tie it. You can just say enable. In some cases, like Evernote and Box, all these Todoist, for example, it'll say log in. But once you log in, you can customize the swipes and shortcut keys for that for those apps. So
you just answered my question on how to get the email into these systems.
What do you think about that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
you have changed my world.
I did. I think I really did. You become savvy with some of these shortcut keys and swipes, and then you can, your life gets a lot easier. So integrations, Mailbird on Windows is another that does the same thing. These apps that tie together other systems and allow you to integrate your inbox and your email inbox and your workbox. What about Outlook, though? I know so many people obviously are probably listening to this. They're sitting at work and they use Outlook. Outlook is a massive, massive application, and it does all this stuff for you, right? It's very convenient that the inbox is also the workbox app, right? You just send this email and make it a task, and now it's on your task list. Take this email and make it an event. Now it's on your calendar. That's very convenient, and Outlook has a lot going for it. The challenge that I have with Outlook is because your inbox is your workbox, it's always checking for new inbox stuff. So I simply encourage you to visit that work offline in the send receive menu and turn off the incoming signal for a while. Maybe create
because you're going to still see the inbox.
Exactly. You can't hide from
new
it.
Emails when you're trying to work. I see.
So you can go into the send receive groups option, and there's a little checkbox that says schedule automatic send and receive every N minutes, right? I think the default is like 30, and many people change it to 10 or 5. So it's always looking for email. And I disagree with that. I think you should change it to, 120 or 240, right? Make sure it's scheduling an automatic send and receive action 2 or 3 times a day so that you're not inundated with email every, few minutes. But your mileage may vary. If you're in an office and you need, you're expected to have, quicker access to email, you'll have to figure that out. But Outlook is one that has all of those integrations that I'm talking about built in. So other apps that, and not recommendations specifically, but just more things to think about. Machine learning and artificial intelligence, they're buzzwords, but believe it or not, they're having a big impact on your email. Gmail, for example, is getting smarter. It's getting way smarter, right? It's able to figure out appointments that come into your email. It's figuring out plane tickets and train tickets, and it's finding all of these things and reminding you when they are coming, adding events to your calendar as it discovers that events have come into your email, and it's doing that without you having to take action. And that is the future of email. That is what these smart teams are doing to actually help you manage your email without having to waste the brain space yourself on it, right? This is the same kind of transition we made from having to memorize all of our friends and family's phone numbers to actually being able to put them in an online address book, right? That's a big deal that we don't think about phone numbers anymore because we don't have to. At some point, we're going to not have to think about email anymore because the system will take care of all of the minutia for us. Edison is another app. Edison Email is doing the same thing. These guys are trying to solve the email problem by just having you run their software, right? It will find contacts and calendar app appointments and trips and bills and photos, and their assistant feature actually creates these beautiful timelines of subscriptions, travel, shipping notifications, bills, receipts, entertainment like Fandango, barcodes, security. It's constantly checking your email accounts against data sources that are tracking emails that have been included in major hacks. It's amazing. And then it also lets you warn your friends that their email address might have been hacked. So you can go to the security timeline and it says, okay, you've got like 6 friends. They were in the most recent Equifax release of data. You may want to warn them. They may not know. So this software in the background is super intelligent about about the kind of data that's flowing in and out of your email. And so I think if you keep in mind, right, integrations, how to tie your email inbox into other services, and intelligence, machine learning, AI, those kinds of terms, when you're shopping for your next email client, you're going to end up with a smarter email client and a better email experience.
Wow.
Your mind blown?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I love this stuff because now I'm inspired to purge and delete and archive and get that Airmail and put stuff into Evernote. And this is great. Thank you. See, I was so looking forward to this. I know it helped me tons. Good. And I hope it helped our listeners.
Well,
too.
I'm glad. It's a little bit longer episode, but I feel like this is important stuff. And if you hang up on email, then I hope you find that this is useful to you, and that you can use it to move forward. Face the fear. That's it.
Face the fear. Mm-hmm. That's right. So next week is our last show of the year.
Yes, it is. Bring champagne.
Yes, it is. Yes. And I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. But it's going to be really good.
Excellent.
Probably a little bit of year in review. Mm-hmm. And I probably, now that I'm talking about it, probably talk a little bit about the webinar that I just did because that was on goal setting.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe
this is a good time.
Yeah.
Maybe one of your goals is getting ahead of your email.
And now you have a plan.
There you go.
Yep.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Pete.
you so much,
Nikki
Nikki Kinzer. This was super fun. And thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening. Especially thank you to those of you who have jumped on the Patreon train. We sure appreciate your direct support. It means a lot.
Are you going to put all these links and stuff into the show notes?
Oh, yeah. I actually have a big train trip this afternoon, so I'll be using that to build the show notes and get everything done.
Awesome.
Here we go. All right. Thanks, everybody. We deeply appreciate your time and attention. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next time for our last show of the year, right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.